So something that we alluded to already when I was talking about the Goodfellow book and it's being freely available online is that MIT Press publishes a lot of books with open access. So over 12% of books are freely available. Why is open access valuable to scientists, data scientists, anybody doing research and development?
Well, I think it's valuable to all scholars and researchers. There's a special value to people in data science when you think about having that underlying information available to mine and compute over. But our investment in open access goes back literally decades at the MIT Press. And for us, it's an issue of making scholarship as equitably accessible around the world as possible, to as many researchers as possible and readers as possible, and also to broadening participation in the whole research enterprise by making this information widely available. Um, Among many other things that I'm involved in relation to the open data, open science, open access space is I'm on the board of Creative Commons, which of course is the organization that
No
created
kidding.
and
Wow.
runs the open licenses that we all use when we put our works online.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't catch that in my research before the episode. That's amazing. And yeah, it makes so much sense to me that research, academic work, which is often publicly funded, it makes sense to me that it should be available then to the public to read. And so there's been a big shift since I've been an academic. So it's now 10 years since I finished my PhD. And it was during my PhD period where um, not only did we start to digitize works, so it's crazy to me to think that in my undergrad, especially in the first couple of years of my undergrad, I had to physically go to the library
That's
and
right.
photocopy journal articles that I wanted
Yeah.
to read later.
If you look back at the history of digital information and open access, it really did take off in the scientific journal space. But now today, and certainly in the way in which we publish at the MIT Press, it's across all disciplines and everything that we publish. But it's a complicated topic. So you mentioned, okay, publicly funded research should be openly accessible. It's not that simple. I mean, that is a
Mm,
core principle, but often you are talking about the creative works, blood, sweat, and tears of an individual or a lab that has data that
right.
it wants to use and leverage in other ways. And so these decisions are sometimes individual decisions, not necessarily made on the principle that it should be open. So for us, for example, when we publish open access books, it's always with the consent of the author, if it's something that we initiate, or because the authors, like in the case of the deep learning book, have demanded or expected that the work be made openly accessible. And that was a great example for us because, we it's very easy if you look at the business of publishing for us to take, say, scholarly monographs and professional books, which have a relatively specialized, limited audience, and say, we'll figure out a model in which we can make those openly available. We'll still sell some in print and digital form. But if you look at, our textbook program, especially in computer science, AI, machine learning, which has been so core to the revenue of the press and the history of the press, it's a lot harder. But now, a huge percentage of our reference and textbooks in AI, machine learning are openly available. And what we saw with deep learning was just, it was the right book at the right time, and it was so tremendously successful in print while it was being made openly available.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell because you can't kind of you it's hard to figure out from the data what the causal impact is, but I hypothesize without any real data to back me up that making something publicly available, it increases the reach so much. It allows a book like Deep Learning to have such a broad impact that everybody's aware of it. You're like, wow, this amazing book is available online. But you're also like, but a lot of people, despite having access to it online, for me, for a lot of people, having the physical book, I'm able to attend to it a lot better. I'm able to make a lot more progress. I feel like I can understand concepts a lot better as a result of that. You can step away from the computer and just work through the book. And so for me, the book is then hugely valuable. And so I might look at the first few pages online, the first chapter, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got to buy this. And I think that that experience happens for a lot of people.
I think that's true. We see that a lot in open textbooks where we know that students want to have the digital file as well as that print book. And yeah, certainly with a book like this, with many books, we've done some experiments where it hasn't worked so well. So, for example, when we've done like a $0 Kindle edition of a book, that
Mhm.
really depresses print sales. And so, we've had to kind of find our way to doing this because we believe it's the right thing to do, and we want to support our authors who want their works to be openly available, but making it sustainable. Um, so,
That's cool. That
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense, and that explains why it says on deeplearningbook.org, it says, there's something like an FAQ at the bottom that's like, "Can I get a PDF version?" It's like, "No, you can't."
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
'Cause
I'm
yeah.
I'm in yeah. I'd love to be able it's we aspire going forward to be able to figure out the model that does allow us to have that PDF. We're
Yeah.
still working on it. So,
No, I mean, in terms of a browsing experience on your computer anyway, I think HTML is better. Like, there's no point in having this idea that information should fit into a small box
yeah.
shape when you can scroll infinitely anyway. So,
Mm.
I think that's great.